Welcome back. You're still watching The Globe on the SABC News Channel. We're giving you special coverage of events that are unfolding in the United States this evening, and on Capitol Hill in particular, where a certification process by the Senate and Congress was brought to a halt by demonstrators who breached the premises of Capitol Hill and have literally stopped things playing out there, and it's unlikely that they will get back to the debate and the certification process. We've been speaking to John Leboutillier, a former congressman with the Republican Party in New York State, and also our U.S. correspondent in New York, Sherwin Bryce-Pease, who's been watching events from there. But a man on the ground, literally, in Washington, D.C., where all of this is playing out, is our correspondent there, Nick Harper, and he joins us now live. Nick, thanks so much indeed for joining us. From your vantage point, what can you see and what is the atmosphere like, apart from freezing cold?
Well, Peter, it has been a chaotic couple of hours here outside the Capitol building. You can see it just behind me. That is Capitol Hill, the Congress building in the center of the picture there behind me. But you can also probably see protesters who are all the way up the steps, and they have managed to occupy that area for the last hour and a half, something like that, after they broke through barricades, forcing police back and moving all the way up the steps. They also forced their way into the Capitol Hill building, and shots were fired by police inside. We're being told that one woman is in a critical condition as a result of receiving gunshot wounds in the chest. Police responded as quickly as they could, trying to push back protesters, but by that stage it was already too late. Several hundred protesters, supporters of Donald Trump, far-right militia groups had forced their way inside the Capitol building, and that was where we got to the point where they had to evacuate the Senate chamber, where that certification was taking place. The Vice President, Mike Pence, was rushed out. Other lawmakers were taken away. Some of them were told to return to their offices to gather gas masks because there was tear gas being fired in the area. It's unclear if that was fired by police or by protesters, but we certainly know the police had to use pepper spray and also paintball bullets to try and force some of the protesters back. But they spent some time within the Capitol building, some time occupying the building and disrupting the proceedings during the course of the day.
All right, so lethal force being used in this instance. One, I suppose, begs the question that, especially given what's been happening in the lead up to today, were the police horribly underprepared for what's played out?
Well, Peter, I think that will be the huge question that now has to be answered. We know that police have spent several days preparing for all of this. The DC mayor called in about 350 National Guard to be on the streets, but they were going to be unarmed, essentially here as a deterrent. She also increased the police presence, and they blocked off many of the roads surrounding not just the Capitol, but the White House, much of this downtown DC area. But did they have enough people in the right places? Did they have enough police outside the Capitol building, which essentially was going to be the focal point of today? That was the place that at lunchtime today that certification process was taking place. Now, Donald Trump spoke a couple of hours before that at the White House, about a mile in that direction. And during that speech, he urged protesters to march to Capitol Hill after his speech had finished. And that is, of course, what happened. And after that, we saw those scenes playing out, chaotic scenes with those protesters forcing their way not just up the steps, but into the building as well. So many questions being asked about the part that Donald Trump has to play in this. He has tweeted in the last hour a couple of times calling for calm, calling for people not to act violently. But of course, he has spent much time in the last couple of months undermining the democratic process here in the United States, undermining that election that took place on November the 3rd that he lost, but has been unable to accept, and essentially riling up his supporters. There will be questions as to whether he incited this violence that we saw taking place over the course of the last couple of hours.
All right, we're struggling with your audio now because of the wind, but perhaps one final question for you. We're seeing a lot of people walking away from Capitol Hill. Does that mean people are starting to leave and that police are starting to gain control of Capitol Hill, or are there still a number of people on those steps as they were a while ago?
Still a number of people on those steps. I think there's a couple of things happening, Peter. Some people were initially concerned about what was happening. People who perhaps didn't want to be involved in that violence, they didn't want to be involved in the tear gassing or the pepper spraying, they began to move back. But then the mayor of DC, Muriel Bowser, she announced a curfew that would start in about 2.5 hours from now at 6 p.m. It would run 12 hours through to 6 a.m. tomorrow. And at that point, as word got through the crowds that that was going to happen, we began to see that exodus. People worried about being out on the streets when the curfew hit, wanting to try and get home. And we've had lots of people like this woman over here who've come up and antagonized the press during the course of the day, calling them out for fake news, saying that they shouldn't be wearing masks. Even those have to happen.
Make hell break loose because
and we obviously have people who are unhappy with the press coverage that's taking place, even though we've got a Democratic...
All right, I've got a feeling that break in transmission perhaps is a little bit more than just satellite issues. Who knows? Because we did hear in the background there some very unhappy Republican supporters, not happy with the press. All right, let's get final thoughts now. Let's start with you, John Leboutillier. This is... I guess one of the final chapters of a presidency that really has turned the book on how a president should behave and how an administration should be run.
Totally. I mean, you know, I'm just texting to a friend of mine about it. This is a fitting end to these 4 years of Donald Trump, what he's done to this country, to our political system. And it's not just him. It's his supporters who are ignorant idiots and hateful people. They're a minority in my country, but they shouldn't be allowed to run the country. And it's time to clamp down on them. I'm hearing there were people have been shot by this. I don't know who shot who. We're going to find out. But this is a crime. To invade the Capitol, challenge the cops is criminal. Trump is the head of this conspiracy to do this. He should be punished for it. He's gotten away with everything for 4 years. No one dared to punish this jerk. And now is the time to do it. I don't care if there are 14 days left. Do it anyway and put a stop to it.
All right, John Leboutillier, thank you so much. Always good to talk to you. Let's hope the next time we have a conversation that things will have gone and the certification process done, and we'll see what plays out. But I've got a feeling that's going to be quite a few 24, maybe even 48 hours still to go on this story. Thanks so much.
I agree, Peter. Talk to you then.
All right, let's get final thoughts from our correspondent in New York, Sherwin. Republicans always pointing, Republican supporters, some of them always pointing to the media and what the media does throughout all of this time.
Well, I'll show you that this media professional is not responsible for the chaos that you're seeing on the streets in Washington right now. Let me just update you on a few developments. Vice President-elect Biden will address the nation in a short time to address specifically what we are seeing in Washington, D.C. Kayleigh McEnany, the press secretary of the President of the United States, saying that at his direction, the National Guard is on its way. So essentially what we were talking about earlier, the president is now deploying the National Guard to protect federal buildings in the United States, no less the Capitol building in Washington. She writes that we reiterate President Trump's call against violence and to remain peaceful. Lindsey Graham, one of the senator from South Carolina and one of the president's biggest supporters in the United States Senate, Peter, he tweeted a short time ago, quote, "I support peaceful protests, but not violence and destruction. People need to leave the Capitol now. This is a national embarrassment." This is, of course, I think one of the senators that was going to object in that ceremonial process to affirm Biden's Electoral College win. We've also reached out to the United Nations to get their reaction. I'm just getting a tweet back from the spokesperson saying they don't have any reaction now, but they're working on it. So we hope to hear the United Nations talk about what's going on in the United States, something we don't often hear, every day, Peter, specifically as it pertains to what you would hope would be a free and fair election process, which it was But that certainly wouldn't be the sense you get seeing what we are seeing in the United States today.
Mike Pence has just tweeted 8 minutes ago, peaceful protest is the right of every American, but this attack on our capital will not be tolerated, and those involved will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. So this is quite a thing, given that they were sent there by Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's very, the co-guest that you had on earlier talking about the need to impeach the president. This is you have to draw up articles of impeachment before you impeach. You don't just go into the House and impeach someone. So maybe the House Judiciary Committee under Ralph Nadler that led the impeachment process of Donald Trump, when was it, 2018, 2019? Maybe that, no, actually 2019, 2020. It was actually just last year when that process concluded. The articles of impeachment need to be drawn up. There needs to be a vote in the House. They're not allowed to go into the House right now because of the chaos that you're seeing. Then it transfers to the Senate, where you need to have hearings and then a vote. So it's a long, convoluted process that I don't think ends before Donald Trump leaves office. But I think the point is if he were to be impeached and convicted in the Senate, he would then not have the option to run again for the presidency, as many people have been speculating he might do in 2024. So we are really in an uncharted territory here. I'm sure Nancy Pelosi is meeting with her caucus right now, trying to talk about the steps ahead. Mike Pence is being quite bold there in terms of talking about the fact that this will not stand. It's just, these are people that have been very supportive of the president before. So it's going to be interesting to see if some of these sycophants are going to come out and really stand up for democracy here today.
All right, Sherwin, we're going to leave it there for the time being. Perhaps we might talk to you again a little later if things develop. So keep an eye out for us there from New York. Thanks so much indeed.
Sure, Peter. Speak to you soon.
All right, that's our US correspondent in New York, Sherwin Bryce-Pease. So that's the situation that's playing out on Capitol Hill. The certification process has come to an end. It's unlikely to continue today because of the demonstrators there that were trying to stop, I guess, in the end, the certification process. There had some of them been at a rally that was organized and was addressed by Donald Trump. But unfortunately, his instruction for them to march onto Capitol Hill perhaps got a little ahead of what he had in his mind, because there was a breach of security. They entered the premises of Capitol Hill there, and we're hearing reports from Nick Harper, our correspondent in Washington, that people have been shot, and one woman critically shot in the chest, and it seems that deadly force is being used to try and control the crowd. As we speak, there are still a number of Trump supporters that are still outside on the steps of Capitol Hill, and we believe that the federal guard is on its way to try and deal with the situation, because the Capitol Hill police just couldn't do the job.